you see that Behavior are officially off their rocker? What did Behavior do this time? They did a stream talking about the changes they're making to the scrap systems from the last BTB and this next one. They try to double down and say killers are being handheld and survivors weren't. Should I check that stream out? Do you have the VOD of it?
So the first question people might ask is, why are we doing these things? Why are we looking at these strategies that people employ to play the game? It's quite simple. Facecamping, tunneling, and slugging were in the top 5 reasons for people uninstalling the game. And, you know, we as developers and myself as a player, we want the game to last long.
Yeah, but the majority... yeah, but there's 1 killer and there's 4 survivors. So, of course, Facecamping, slugging, and tunneling are going to be the major factor for people to uninstall the game, because they make up 4/5 of the community. But just because the majority of the people are complaining about that doesn't necessarily mean it's in an unhealthy ratio. But I digress.
So to make sure that that happens and that the game can keep going as long as it can, we have to address the issues that people have, or the players have, within the game. So Facecamping, slugging, and tunneling are 3 of the issues that we have to address.
To ensure the longevity of Dead by Daylight, we must address these problems and teach players how to counter them effectively. If you really want the game to last long, you kind of have to give an FU to killers and make the majority happy. That's what you need to do for longevity. That decision is not always necessarily the correct one.
Okay, so let me start by saying or explaining what facecamping is. So usually it's described as the killer staying in very close proximity to a hooked survivor. And over here you can see there's a nice little picture where it shows you what facecamping is, what proxy camping is, and what patrolling is.
Okay.
So when you're very close to the hook, that's usually facecamping. When you're like mid length away from the hook, that's proxy camping. You're just making sure, you know, the survivor's still there. And when you're a little bit further, you're patrolling. You're, you know, looking from afar, seeing no one's going for the save. Okay, so that's basically what the different steps or stages of camping are.
Okay.
So overall, we have seen that since the start of 2025, facecamping, so the closest proximity to the hook, has not really had any major shift. It's been pretty steady.
Okay. Facecamping has seen no major shift. This is generally because killers will do anything and everything to try to win, no matter how difficult you make it. Base kit endurance, base kit haste. The harder you make it for killers to get the amount of kills they're used to, the harder they're going to play to get that same result. So if you make it even harder, killers are going to try to go even harder.
Which is kind of a weird thing to talk about, but you know, that's the data. Patrolling, which is when you're further than 20 meters away, has increased a little bit. So killers tend to stay closer to the hook by about 3 seconds as opposed to...
Because they made it harder to play killer.
2025. And surprisingly, which is something that I think is fascinating, because it could imply that survivors are learning to not rush unhooks, which is great. Survivors take more time to go for rescues. So you will leave your teammate on the hook for a little longer because you're going to finish that gen. And that's usually a good thing. So yeah, good job. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about for key data points is when the resolve bar fills, so that's the bar that fills up when you're being camped, there's a 10% increase in escape rates. So the face camping mechanic or reduction that we implemented, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, actually has an impact on how the matches go.
Okay.
So here is a breakdown by MMR. So you can see that low MMR killers tend to face camp more than mid or high MMR killers. And in terms of maps, Raccoon City Police Department West Wing is the highest percentage for face camping, and Wretched Shop is the lowest.
Okay, let's see this on a psychological standpoint. When the game is harder to play, killers will try harder to win. RPD has one of the highest face camping data points. It's because it's probably one of the hardest maps to get like kills on for killer. So the reason why face camping is higher is because it's more difficult to get kills on that map. So if we follow this trend, the harder you make it for killers to win, the higher the chance they're going to face camp or proxy camp. So if behavior makes it harder for killers to face camp or to camp at all, they're going to increase the amount of camping.
So what are the goals with the face camping updates in the upcoming PTB? The first is to bridge the gap between solo players and survive with friends, and it'll all make sense in just a second. And the other one is to make the anti-Facecamp mechanic fair for both sides.
When you bridge the gap between solo players and survivor friends, behavior is basically saying they want to make solo players play like a survivor friends. So basically, the best method to do that is to literally give solo players voice chat to talk with each other. This will also make it harder to play killer.
So what's next? In the upcoming PTB, you'll be able to test and hopefully give us a lot of feedback. The resolve bar when being camped will be visible to all survivors. So that means if I'm being camped and Diego is doing a gen on the other side of the map, he will see the resolve bar filling on the HUD. So he'll be able to tell, one, that I'm being camped, but also what the progress is on that camp meter. The next thing is the meter will fill up faster based on how long the killer stays within proximity of the hook. So this is really cool because first we've also decreased the rate at which it fills baseline, so the killer's not penalized for walking by or anything like that. It's really just if you spend a lot of time near the hook, it will fill up much faster, up to 200% of the life value, which is 10 charges per second. And then the last thing we did as well is we increased the range of the anti-Facecamp radius to 20 meters. So it's a little bit more punishing in a way if you decide to stick within 20 meters with a hatchet pulled out or other scenarios. Initially, when you hook a survivor, there's a 7-second grace period before the meter starts filling up. But that wouldn't only apply to when you hook that specific survivor. So in my example, where you hook a second survivor in the basement, that first survivor that you hooked will still be filling up that meter. Now, with the upcoming PTB, if you hook a second survivor, it will put the grace period on all hooked survivors within the area that you're in. So you won't be penalized for doing that.
So increase the range of anti-Facecamp radius to 20 meters. So if you are in 20 meters, they count that as face camping. Here's the thing. Behavior is trying to nerf tunneling, camping, and slugging because they have this self-defined view of what good, fun gameplay is. Chasing, right? They're gonna nerf camping. Killers are going to camp even harder. So they're going to gut camping so it's impossible. And then the killers are like, okay, what do we do now? Okay, now we're going to tunnel. And then what's going to happen is okay, behavior's now people are complaining about tunneling. We're going to gut tunneling. Then killers are like, I'm going to tunnel even harder to try to win even more now. And then behavior's going to absolutely destroy tunneling. Damn, now I can't camp and tunnel. Killers are going to be like, okay, now I'm going to slug. So then behaviors are going to gut slugging because slugging complaints are going to raise up even higher. And then killer's like, damn, now I'm going to slug even harder just to win. And then behavior's going to destroy slugging. Killer's like, damn, what do I do now? Until every single killer either gets sick of all the nerfs or that every killer plays endgame or something. So behavior has this self-defined vision of what fun, good gameplay is. And they're trying to funnel every single player into playing that very same way, homogenizing the gameplay loop. Just because the majority of your complaints are about these mechanics doesn't necessarily mean the existence of these mechanics are wrong. Of course, the majority of people uninstall because of tunneling, camping, and slugging. But that's because the survivors make up 4/5 of the community. But if you gut every single strategy that a killer can have to winning the game, you're just going to make killers leave the game. They funneled killers into face camping, tunneling, and in the first place. Yeah, the thing that I precisely said is exactly what's happening right now. So they're homogenizing the gameplay loop such that every single killer plays the same. On paper, that does not sound like a good thing.
I zoomed in on the HUD so that we can see the resolve bar filling. And so that's the first thing you'll notice is that it's visible. But the second thing you'll notice is that as the trapper just sticks around there, it'll fill up faster and faster, which is what we were saying. Well, what I was just saying about it filling up faster based on how long you stayed near the hook. I think it'll be really helpful, but again, you guys can test it out and get feedback on it because that's the whole point.
We really are testing these features in the next PTB. Don't start being really upset that this is already in the game and I hate it. What we want to do is test it. We want to get your feedback with hands-on, not just based on the information.
The problem is not necessarily the mechanics, but necessarily the mentality. Just because the majority of complaints are about tunneling, camping, and slugging, I need to look at the reasons as to why are people tunneling and camping, slugging more. Is the game too hard? If you made the game a little bit easier for killers, would it ease up their gameplay. What they like to do is they like to hit and punish to dissuade behaviors they want to discourage. But what they should probably be focusing on their approach is more so to incentivize the play styles that they'd like people to use, such that the unfun behaviors are done less. It's more beneficial to play fun rather than not fun.
What is tunneling? Well, tunneling is usually described when you go for the same survivor until they are out of the match. Throughout 2025, we have seen a slight drop. The average percentage of tunneling happening in matches. 44% of matches had tunneling occurrences in January. And when I say tunneling, there's different ways that we're analyzing it. The first one is when you go for one survivor and only one survivor from the start of the match. There's also when you go for consecutive hooks, not necessarily the first survivor that you find, but you just get the second survivor out of the match quickly. And then there's the last one, which I'm completely blanking out on, but this is the overall of all these scenarios that we analyzed with the data. And then if we look at the breakdown by MMR, we see the opposite of what we saw with camping. So low MMR killers tend to tunnel less than high MMR killers, which is also interesting. And we could extrapolate as to why. One hypothesis is that high MMR survivors are just more efficient, so therefore tunneling feels like the most efficient way to combat their efficiency. But that's another thing that you guys can theory craft on and help us understand. And then in terms of maps, the treatment theater has the highest percentage of tunneling, and Gas Heaven has the lowest. And same thing as with camping.
Treatment theater is the smallest map in the game. So since the space is smaller altogether, it's easier to find survivors quicker, which is thus also part of the reason why tunneling is increased. Map size is very small, so it's easier to run into the same survivor again, thus higher tunneling rates.
Gas Heaven, I mean, the map is pretty strong for survivors, so...
You thought Dead Dog was? Well, this is one of the smaller maps. I don't know if Dead Dog might be the smaller one.
So what are the goals with
Windows
tunneling?
everywhere? Yeah.
We want to ensure that every player's time is respected, and we also want to make sure that when you queue up, it means that you get to play the match. When you queue up, we would like you to be able to play the game and just have fun, which is the most important part. And we also want to ensure that player agency is retained, and I'll expand on that a little bit, and I think it's the next slide or the one after that, but we want to ensure that player agency is retained, and we want to put the onus on the survivor. So the key learnings from the PTB. The first one is that the players found the proposed solution too intrusive, and to refresh everyone's memory, on the PTB, the last PTB that we had the Unhook Protections for survivors, we had the killer penalties if you did tunnel, we had the killer bonuses, and all of these things together felt like it was a little too much, which is a very fair point. Players want to retain their agency. They want to be able to make those decisions. They want to be able to make the call. They want to be able to play the game the way they want without being told you can't do that or you can't do this, which again is a very, very fair point. And then to build up on that, a lot of players felt that the solution in the previous BTB held their hand too much. So it was, you got a unique hook, so now you get like a gen kick bonus, or you got the aura reveal, and then I think the way that it was described, which I thought was a really good way to describe it, was that it felt very, very cookie cutter. There was one right way to play the game, and if you didn't do it, then you were kind of like shooting yourself in the foot, which is not super cool.
Homogenization of the gameplay loop.
What's next? The first one is that survivors will get their Unhook Protections. The killer will get some bonuses, and there are no more killer penalties, which I think was the most polarizing topic in the previous VTB is the penalties. So Unhook Protections, so you still get 10% haste. You still get the endurance status effect. There's the new status effect elusive, which means that you cannot be revealed, you will leave no pools of blood, no scratch marks, and you make no grunts of pain. One thing that we added as well is that you will make no sounds, so you won't be, coughing or puking or stuff like that, because
I think that's good.
Some killers had very clever ways of bypassing the system in the previous PTB. You still do not accumulate AFK points, so AFK crows will not come into play if you are under the Unhook Protections. You will still see the killer's aura within 32 meters, and these are still lost when performing a conspicuous action or when being healed a full health state. When it's in endgame, these bonuses are mostly turned off. The only ones that are on are the 10% haste and endurance that are granted for 10 seconds, which is what it is currently on live. Meg is the star of the show. She gets unhooked, and I zoomed in on the status effects. You can see there's the endurance, there's the haste, and there's elusive. You see the killer's aura, and the survivor basically has a lot of tools to avoid the killer.
Okay.
Key differences: we have removed the neural collision from Unhook Protections, and we've decreased the killer aura reveal to 10 seconds, so it doesn't last the entire duration of the Unhook Protections. And you might ask why? Well, we saw in the previous BTB that survivors were weaponizing both of these effects to go for aggressive plays, as opposed to trying to survive, which is the intended goal of the Unhook Protections, is to put you in a spot where you can make better decisions to survive. What we saw was that killers who were actively trying to not tunnel were being punished by these things. So upon a unique hook, which is hooking a different survivor from the last, so I got hooked and then Diego gets hooked, that's a unique bonus. Sorry.
I tried.
So the first one is that you will gain Bloodlust for 15 seconds. And the second is that you gain a stackable blood point multiplier on your match score. So as you can see here, I hook her. I have the Bloodlust bonus, so I'm moving slightly faster.
I think the bloodlust thing is fine. Behavior is essentially going to homogenize the gameplay loop such that everyone just goes hook, go, and eventually, every killer is just going to eventually have to just play end game and gen control, because they like to nerf a lot of the gen perks too, right? That's what I mentioned. A lot of the killers are just going to be funneled into one gameplay style. Okay, I don't know if that's healthy.
So key differences, like I mentioned, we swapped the haste bonus for Bloodlust. We have removed the bonus generated damage on the next kick, and we removed the aura reveal, also dubbed base kit barbecue. So the reason why we switched haste to Bloodlust is specifically because haste doesn't have a limit to how it stacks with killer powers. So that means that if you, for example, played the Spirit and you got haste from a uni hook, that would stack with the haste that you got from your power, which basically makes a strong killer even stronger. And that's not usually what we like. We don't want to make the gap between weaker killers and stronger killers wider. We want to try to make it smaller. So using Bloodlust allows us to do that because, again, if you use your power, you will not get the full benefit, unlike someone like Trapper, for example, not likely to use his traps for mobility, so he'll probably get the full benefit from this bonus. And then the next two goes back to what I was saying, where a lot of players felt that it would hold their hands into how they played the game, and it felt very cookie cutter. Like there was one right way to play: is you would get a uni hook, you would go to a gen, you would kick that gen, then you would see the aura, and you would go to there, and you would just rinse and repeat this whole sequence over and over again. And one of the things that we came to realize after the last BTB is that goes against some of our core pillars. One of our core pillar is chaos, and not chaos in the sense that everything is all over the place, but things are unpredictable, right? The player has, and the second one is player agency. So the player has control in how they want to play the game and how they want to approach each different scenario. Unpredictable chaos comes from those player decisions, and so if we put a feature in that removes that, then we are not true to our core pillars, and that's usually a no-go for things in game development. So, all right, what is slugging? So slugging is usually described as putting a survivor in the dying state and leaving them there. Now there is slugging, which is for pressure. So here we have, that's Dwight, by the way, that's in the dying state. And the Skull Merchant is, seeing that there's a Nia on the side, just maybe waiting for a flashlight save, who knows. So she decides to chase the Nia. So that's slugging for pressure. And then you have the more evil Skull Merchant. Here she has slugged 4 Dwights, and they're all in the dying state. So the first one is good. We like that. This is a good thing. The second one, not so much. Overall, killers across all MMR tend to slug for about 30 seconds. So that's time spent in the dying state for survivors. And overall, high MMR survivors spend less time in the dying state at 26 seconds, which means that higher MMR survivors will go for those pickups either faster or more efficiently, by bringing perks or whatever. If we look at the comparison between January and now, we do see that survivors spend less time in the dying state. So this is 35 seconds in January, and then it went down to 34 seconds in June, and now it's down to 30 seconds. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that in January, there was about 4% of matches that would have bleed outs in them. So that's when you would fully die from being slugged, when your bleed out meter would just empty. And that's down to 2%, and it has been consistent with the release of the abandoned feature.
Also, they implemented conviction, right? They added like anti-slugging perks as well.
Is the map with the highest time spent slugged is the game. I have tried to understand why or how since I put this in the slide, and I am still not sure. And the lowest, which is contrary to what we had with the camping portion, is RCPD West Wing at 28 seconds, which is also interesting because I'm pretty sure that that one might be more confusing for survivors. I don't know.
Everybody's yelling pallets.
Pallets for the game?
Yeah. They're just shouting the word pallets. That's
I mean, I'm glad that they like
Thought you'd
pallets,
like to know that.
you know, that's cool. Obviously, our intention since the start was to target excessive slugging while retaining slugging for pressure. So remember the skull merchant who was chasing Nia and, leaving Dwight on the ground? That's good, that's slugging for pressure. And we did have some key learnings from the previous PTB. So the first one was that players found that crawling while recovering was too strong. So for a bit of context, in the previous PTB, survivors could recover, they recovered automatically while crawling, so you could move while recovering, which allowed you to reposition while also getting ready to be picked up, and it was very strong. And players were also faced with lose-lose scenarios, because with the tunneling reduction feature and the penalties that were there, you couldn't get someone out because they were the last one that you hooked, but you also couldn't slug them because they could just pick themselves up. So that's a bit of an oversight on our part, but now this time that is not the case. So again, test it out and give us your feedback.
I will say,
Yes.
Jeff didn't do the pallet density stuff, so he's not going to speak to the pallet density stuff.
Oh yeah, no.
People are
Sorry, not me, not yet.
When we get
Not
Mandy
yet.
back out here, she can give you an update.
So the next one is that the players felt the time to fill the resolve bar was too short. But in the next PTB, it'll be 120 seconds. It will fill 33% faster for each additional survivor in the dying state. So if a killer is indeed slugging a little bit more than for just pressure, well, they risk a slug or multiple slugs getting back up and away. So once the resolve bar is full, the survivor will be able to pick themselves up for the rest of the trial. However, they need to fill their recovery meter every single time. You can't just pick yourself up back up the moment you're down. The crawling speed of a survivor will increase over time while in the dying state, and it will go up to 1 meter, 1.05 meters per second. And so as you can see, the resolve bar is still filling. The meg on the right should be about halfway, if my eyes are not deceiving me. So here you can see the meg on the right has been done with her resolve bar for quite some time, while the meg on the left is still trying. So you can see there's a very big difference between only slugging a survivor versus multiple survivors. And I think she's just about to get there. There we go. She just finally got the ability
so this is
to pick herself back up.
So they added base kit unbreakable, yeah? It's still for the rest of the match? Oh, damn. So then they have base kit unbreakable completely. The only thing about this that concerns me is let's say you go against a 4-man SWF and they complete and we know generators can be done in 4 to 5 minutes. Sometimes you need to slug in order to win the match like this. Sometimes it's wow, they did 4 gens, I have 0 hooks. I have to slug. So the killer starts slugging, and then now, because the match is so hard, the killer needs to try harder to win. Now the survivors have base kit unbreakable. So it makes those matches against those harder survivors even harder now. But I feel like behavior is more so focused on newer casual players, so they don't take gutting that situation. It's you know what, screw it, Harder matches get harder, and this kind of makes the life easier for newer players, but I don't think the newer players get slugged as much, right? This is what they don't get because they want their casual game. The majority of their community is made up of veterans. Since they want to bridge the gap between SoloQ and SWF, is another way of saying we want to make SoloQ matches feel like Survivor Friends matches. So we want every single match to feel like Survivor Friends, because that's the only way to do it. How you want to nerf Survivor Friends? You raise up the SoloQ. So you slug because it's harder to win the game. I'm gonna burn your hand. It's like, stop slugging. All right, you know what? I'm gonna slug even harder. I was like, now they have base kit unbreakable. It's like, oh, why do you keep burning my hand? Like I'm just kind of like, you know? They bring voice chat to the game, then they can balance the game better? Yes. Part of the core problem with a lot of their changes is this whole bridging the gap between SoloQ and SWF, because the only way to perfectly do that is to literally add voice chat to Dead by Daylight and to make solo players act like Survivor friends. Whenever they make changes like this, they always either screw over veteran players and help casual players, or they screw over casual players and help veteran players. I don't think they want to add voice chat to the game. And due to that fact, it's impossible to perfectly bridge that gap. Which is why I believe it's fine if circumstances happen like this, that slugging, tunneling, and camping doesn't necessarily mean to completely gut. I think it's a better approach is to incentivize players to play a way that you want them to, by rewarding a more fun playstyle rather than gutting the viable means of a way a killer has to win. Casual players can become veterans, that's the issue. Casual players will become veterans, okay? Over time, the implementations of the changes that behavior will currently implement will have to get phased out in the future. This is a temporary solution. Unless behavior wants a revolving door effect, where you're a casual player, life's good, you become a veteran, life sucks, and then they revolve out. And it's just constant revolving door effect. My main feedback is not necessarily main on the changes, but the psychological mentality as to why they're doing these changes. Because if the foundation, if the core upon which you make your changes is unstable, it causes all the branches and all the vines which come out of your tree, all out of the roots, to be shaky and unstable, right? So my criticism is on their foundation as to why they're doing these things. They have a self-defined definition of what is considered good. They say tunneling, camping, slugging, bad. Nerf, 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 or disincentivize, 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 right? We want everyone to chase. That's going to funnel everybody to tunnel, camp, slug even harder. So they're going to nerf that even harder, right? And eventually everyone's going to play endgame, like I said a long time ago. They also, in the previous PTB, like nerf gen slowdown, nerf tunneling, nerf camping, nerf slugging. Every single killer will be homogenized into playing one specific way. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. This is also something that behavior has been doing overall with every single decision they've been doing in the game in general. So say for instance, with their map design, with their map reworks, they basically doubled the palettes in every single map, and they've been slowly evolving every single map to be like a main building in the center, a bunch of pallets around, shack, right? They changed Sheltered Woods from just like a tree with a bunch of pallets and a shack to main building in the center, bunch of pallets around, shack. Garden of Joy, yeah, main building in the center, bunch of pallets around, shack. Ormond, like every single map essentially. So behavior has this sort of thing where they find one thing that works and they kind of like cookie cutter it. We found one way that works, one method that's good. We're going to rework and mold everything to one form, one way that community players like. A lot of the maps that were kind of like imbalanced, they just kind of like conformed it. It's like a homogenization of gameplay loop all around. So when we were talking about tunneling, camping, and slugging, they were homogenizing the gameplay loop such that everyone plays hook, go, endgame. And when they were nerfing all the gen perks, they were also homogenizing the killer gameplay builds and play styles to one way. It's like too much gen slowdown. You guys got to run like chase perks and endgame. Same thing for maps, right? Main building in the center, bunch of pallets around, double the amount of pallets, shack. We have this one self-defined way that works. So we're going to funnel all the players into this one way. They said one of their core pillars is variance, right? And chaos. Variance is a good thing. Just because people complain a lot about tunneling, camping, and slugging doesn't necessarily need to completely gut it. It's okay if some people tunnel and camp and slug. Same thing with maps. Just because some maps are too killer-sided, i.e. Sheltered Woods, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean we need to like completely gut it and like double the amount of pallets to every single map, right? It's okay for in the maps of instance, like Treatment Theater has a lot of windows. For the game, it's a map that has a lot of pallets. For Sheltered Woods in the past, it was like, it just didn't have a main building, but you had to loop the pallets correctly, right? Having the ability for a variance will naturally have some maps that suck or some maps that feel good, or some killer play styles that suck and some killer play styles that feel good. And just because people find particular maps, play styles, or builds to not be fun to play against doesn't necessarily mean we need to completely nuke it and gut it such that no one and their mothers can do it anymore, right? Another thing, it's like when they rework the map offerings such that they're only like 20%, right? A lot of unique killer play styles used to be like, okay, Scratch Mirror Mires, I'm going to burn Lyres and I'm going to play Scratch Mirror Mires, or I'm going to burn an outdoor map and I'm going to play Orbital Huntress, or I'm going to play Hillbilly and I'm going to burn an outdoor map, right? Well, now that they lowered the percentage of the map offerings like 20-25% instead of 100%, you're kind of nuking like the uniqueness, the variance of the play styles, right? So you can't burn a map just to play a specific build. You kind of need to gamble it, right? A lot of their decisions are like a homogenization method. It's like we see one way that's fun, so we're going to make it so that everyone conforms to it. And yes, that might be fine for trying to curate a casual player experience, but those casual players are eventually going to become veterans, and it's going to become mundane over time. The type of flavor that makes different maps feel different, playing against different killers feel different, you know? It contributes to the fun factor of like going away from staleness and going more into like I can play how I want, you know? The developers are good for the fact that they listen to their community, but I think that one of the problems is that I think they're blindsided about the long-term effects of their decision-making. Behavior likes to think very short-term, but in essence, they're blinded onto the effects of their decisions on a long-term timeline.